You've been collecting quotations all of your life. How did that start?
I think it started when I was a missionary for my church. I was hearing people say things in talks and presentations, and so I started writing those down. I got quite a book of those, as a matter of fact. I thought that was intriguing. They weren't really quotations; they were just interesting thoughts, sometimes not framed exact. But then I began afterwards to see that I really captured something very interesting, very important.
Let's talk about your educational background. You began in San Francisco and at
Yeah.
Galileo High School.
Yeah, San Francisco's still my favorite city. Dion and I met there, but we love the city. And I went to Galileo High School, which was a marvelous experience. I didn't know at the time. I didn't have any direction when I was going there. I was just sort of wandering. But what's more important than that I never realized till I got out of there and looked at the world, we were really this focal point at Galileo High School of the various ethnic groups in the city. And I knew it, but I never thought how important that was. So we had a tremendous range of people. I just didn't realize how good that was going to be for the rest of my life to have lived and grown up in an environment like that. It was really very special. So after I got through high school, I debated a couple of places. Get this now, I went down and looked at Stanford because I had the grades, I guess, to get in there. And it was a dry August down in Palo Alto. And I said, I wouldn't want to go to school here. Imagine making a judgment about a school based on the climate. Crazy. But anyway, I decided to go to Brigham Young University. And that was an experience that we went there when there weren't very many students there. There were, I think, 5,000 on the campus altogether. So it was a small school at that time, back in 1948. But it was an interesting experience for me because I was off on my own and kind of wondering what I should do. So the first class I took was sound effects, movie, TV sound effects. I couldn't believe it. Looking back, what in the world was I doing that? But that was just kind of, I had no place to go. I just took whatever kind of courses seemed to make sense and finally got into political science. Now, that was a good experience. I mean, I was learning about American democracy, and I found a really nice faculty. There were some really wonderful people. Stuart Grow was the chair, and very helpful. And after we got through, I started to get some classes in psychology, some counseling, very basic ones, but they were kind of intriguing. And because of that, they offered that my wife and I to be able to be dorm parents there and be able to counsel the kids in the dorm. We said, that isn't quite what we want to do. So we kind of crossed our fingers, took a long shot, and went back to Detroit, Michigan. And there we had a scholarship. Somebody else gave it up, and we took it in public administration. And that was to be in Detroit. Just talk about a big city, a long ways away from what I knew from BYU at Provo, Utah. But we spent a year there, and that was kind of a good experience just because it was away. Then after we got through there, we got a master's degree there. And my wife taught school at the rural schools there, which was another fascinating experience for both of us. We got on an airplane and flew to Europe, taking a class on education in Europe. And so we flew to Europe, and Dion's parents were there. Her dad was an Army officer at the Army headquarters. And so we were able to live with them for 2 years, which was, who would have thought you could go to Europe and spend 2 years living with your in-laws or your parents? Marvelous experience. And I got a job teaching with the University of Maryland overseas program. These were mainly people who were adults. They weren't kids going to school. These people working in the area there. I flew to England, taught in England, and taught in Germany. And my gosh, and to see Europe, we traveled all over on the weekends, holidays. We got to see maybe 10 or 12 countries while we were there. After that, I didn't know what to do. I really wasn't quite sure about direction I should go in. I had earlier in my sequence met a man who had really inspired me. This was before we went to Germany. And he inspired me by getting a higher degree and going on and developing. He must have read the book. So I wrote to a number of psychologists whom I didn't know and said, here's what I want to do. I want to get this, and where should I go? And social psychology is what I think I wanted, but didn't know quite what that was. But man, many of these people wrote back and they said, well, Michigan has a great program. Harvard has a great program. Stanford has a good program. I thought about all three of these. Finally decided to go to Michigan, where there were a faculty of 200 people in the field of psychology and related. 200 faculty members, all dispersed in all different areas, but from research stuff in laboratory with the animals to organizational behavior, all kinds of things. And so we went to Michigan and lived in the cold weather, vowing to come back to California someday. And so we spent the years. I got the doctorate in that fascinating experience. Had children born there, 2 of them. We have a growing family, and Dion got a master's while we were there, which is wonderful, kind of her development too. And then we decided where to go now. And we decided after much thought, there were job options then. It wasn't like it is now. And for us, there were jobs. And there was one job at University of Southern California where my friend Kent Lloyd had gone, and he was on the faculty. And lo and behold, we applied there, and I got a position there, and we moved back to California, to Los Angeles, where we'd never thought we'd live. And so that was kind of the educational experience. Now, here in Los Angeles, taught at USC, taught at Pepperdine University. Those were both different experiences. The one, both private schools, but one more liberal in direction, the other much more conservative. So I began to get that experience working with all kinds of people, different viewpoints and values. That was good stuff, and came out of that thing and felt like, I think I'm getting some experience in life. I really was, having lived in Europe now, having gotten 2 or 3, 4 degrees, having taught at 4 or 5 places. And so we decided to leave USC, my colleague and I, and we resigned. And people said, "What are you doing this for? That you're about to get tenure." We both felt the need to get out, so we set up the Center for Leadership Development, called it Pedder, and began to get government grants and other kind of grants. Anyway, we set up our own firm and a nonprofit firm for a lot of years, and that was another great experience to be on our own out there, away from the university. And then finally, one of my books that I looked at, or magazine, said they're looking for part-time people at Los Angeles Police Department, psychologists. And I thought, oh, gee, I could do that part-time. I went there, got accepted, got hired, worked for a couple of wonderful people for 2 or 3 years. And then one of the guys there that we worked with, who was a commander, became the new chief at Long Beach. And he asked me to come down there, which I did. And I spent 20 years in Long Beach working with him and other chiefs, and had that great experience of working with police departments. So I feel like somehow out of all of this, they had the church missionary earlier, you add the degrees, the education, and then raising the family, which was extremely important, and then being with police departments, 2 major departments in all these schools. I felt like, I think I'm sort of getting to be qualified to put together all these quotes I'd been collecting. So I've been exposed to this teaching, training, consulting, and counseling my whole career, and I began to see these quotes were insightful. And they were so insightful to me, they could be insightful to somebody else. So I began kind of dropping one here and dropping one there, and people reacted to them like, "Oh, that's a great thought." It wasn't my thought. It was a great thought. And I was grateful to kind of be bringing these to people, sharing them in my teaching and my leadership role.